Welcome back to this second episode of this building series, where I built a Western Star 6900 TwinSteer in Lego Technic. If you missed the first episode, it was about building the chassis, so if you are interested in, please click on the top right card. You will see how I planned the project and built the fundamental of the drivetrain and suspension in Lego. But today's video is about the bodywork, how to create the iconic shape of this truck, how to start, create the detail and have a neat design. Hi, I am Nico71, an independent Lego Technic designer, and I will show you how I create this Lego Technic replica of the Western Star TwinSteer truck. Back to the previous video, I built the chassis, which was composed mainly of a drivetrain and motorization, suspension and a basic frame to attach all the elements. When everything is scaled correctly and works at least fine, I can move on to start the bodywork. For that, I start with the same approach as before by searching raw materials such as pictures and video to learn more about the model. It is especially important when the original model has different versions finishing as this one. Then, by looking at the picture and blueprint, I spot the flat and horizontal or vertical shape that I will start to reproduce. Why starting by this one? Because they are the easy shape to reproduce as they are flat and positioned in a way which is easy to attach with Lego pieces. For this model, we have for instance the back and side shapes of the cabin, but also the front grille, the bumper and the mudguard. When this element has been reproduced and positioned, it will be easier to build around the more difficult shape, for instance the bonnet. The other advantages to build the easy shape before is that they position visually the bodywork on the model, and then it is easier to see which parts can fit or not and enable to feel the design by having something to see and touch in real. That is why I always build in a real with my Lego part and not digitally. Even if the first build is not very beautiful, just make a raw design with not so much detail but correct scale and position, and then you will rework it after adding the other element. So let's start building the easy shape. I will start by the mudguard, which will help to position the height of the cabin and have to, of course, avoid the collision with the steerable wheel. The build is pretty basic with a stack of beam, but the finishing of the side surface is interesting. You can use beam, which is the uglier solution with the visible hood, or try to hide them. First with tail and wings, which will look a bit too angled here and with visible stud on the wing. Second option is to use tail instead of beam and slope, which is a good solution but more widespread in classic Lego construction. It will look okay, but not so homogeneous with the other part of the design in Technic. So the last option is the one I took, a combination of Lego connector and axle joiner, which have the advantages to present a rounded look and not so much visible hole. When the mudguards are in place, I can create a basic cabin. There is no so much to tell about it. It is composed of beam and connector, as it is mostly vertical and horizontal, but have the advantages to position the cabin regarding the other element. Then I have made the front bumper. It was not the best choice, but at least it positioned the front face of the truck and give a good idea of the overall proportion. For that, I have started using the small panel and some connector and elbow pieces to make the bull bar, but the problem was on the center section. As you can see, the build is not very homogeneous. It has the correct shape on the side thanks to the panel, but the center seems to be a little off. I can use a small 3x1 panel, which has been released recently, but as I need 5 stud wide, I need also 2 small Y/1 panel, which were not available in black where I make this video. Secondly, the small panel fit well the shape in width of the original bumper, but not really in the height, as it is a bit thin. So, I rework completely this bumper and try another version. Here it is. It is composed of connectors which are thicker and give a nice and strong look to the bumper. The problem is that I have now an empty space behind to fill, so I use lift arm and bionicle tooth fixed with half beam to correct the position. It has still some minor hole, but it will be okay when the other element will be finished. So, this build of the bumper is a great example of what you have to care when building, especially the homogeneity of the design. For such an important surface as the front one, and that it is an iconic element of the truck, it has to be homogeneous. That is why you can see that I inspire myself with many bull bars mounted on this truck to create my bull bar which fit the Lego pieces and avoid the strange building. The second important part is to care about how the perception of the shape in Lego is, and not only how it is accurate to the real model. With the panel solution, the bumper was too thin, but with the connector one, it is a bit too thick. So, what is the best solution? Not the one where the closest from the original, but the one where the closest in the perception of the original design. So, as the bumper has to look strong, I take the bigger solution which were more homogeneous. It is a great example of how you can stretch the proportion of the Lego model to fit the perception of the original model. Which means, if you need one more stud to fit the correct panel, then do it. If you need to reduce something to avoid an ugly hole, just do it. As long as the perception of the model is still correct, then it is okay. That is why I do not rely a lot on 100% accuracy of the blueprint, because when you scale down a creation, sometimes you have to modify the proportion to fit the Lego part or emphasize a specific and iconic element. I see too many creations which are 100% accurate in Lego, but which are ugly because limited by the Lego part. So, I encourage you to stretch a bit the proportion, the scale, the detail to have a very good design instead being 100% accurate. Well, that was a big talk of such a small element of the truck, so if you want to know more about how I design, feel free to subscribe to my channel and we are back to the video. Then, I built the most difficult part of this design, the hood. Why? Because it is angled in two directions, in height and in width. The main idea is to use a curved panel that I will angle in both directions as I did on my off-road truck, for instance. I have the choice between two panels, a small one and a big one. I have started by the bigger one by fixing in a row position using connector, which I will replace later. The result is quite good, but the problem is that the panel is a bit too long and that I cannot stretch a lot the proportion as the hood is the iconic element of this truck, so the panel becomes a part of the grille as you can see. It is not a bad idea, but it gives a strange look on the front face and with some visible hole. Why it gives a strange look? Because there is not a front face as the grille in a single element, and so this is a hood which makes on its end the front grille. It gives the perception that the hood is just put on the front face and that there is not a front face. Why this front face is so important? Because it is an iconic shape of the truck, so as usual it has to be homogeneous and well built, but also built in a correct orientation to give the correct perception of the design. As this front face is vertical and flat on the original truck, it acts as a termination shape which is vertical, like a wall. So, this perception of this wall has to be reproduced in Lego. And as you can see, with the long panels, this wall perception is not correct. It is more like the hood is descending in the front direction, but not with a strong stop, and seems to be too long despite it is correct in scale. That is why I changed the solution by replacing the long panel by a small one, but more importantly, I create first the front face of the hood to position the other element. Then I place the small panel, and as they are smaller, I have to fill the hole with other parts like elbow pieces or teal and sheet slope here as you can see. In fact, I cheated a bit on the beginning of the shape of the hood, which should be a little angle, but it is not because hidden by the two big air filters, which enable me to use the small panel and fix the air filter. It is mostly invisible and give at final a correct shape, but more importantly, a correct perception of the shape with a strong wall front face and regular curved hood. Again, a good example of what you can stretch and what you can't in Lego design. Then, I have to finish the hood by filling the big top hole, which was not easy because of the angle section. The first solution is to use beam and let small triangle hole, which can work on the big creation because the triangle hole will be small regarding the size, but it doesn't work here on small creation. The second option is to fill the hole using parts, like panel, but you have of course to find the matching panels, which was not the case here, without having asymmetrical build. The other solution is to fill the hole using wedge and slope. Again, you have to find the matching parts. It works, but I do not like a lot the visible stud. Not because I do not like the studful design, but because it will not look homogeneous with the other element in studless technique. The last solution, which I took, is actually to not fill the hole, but to cover it. For instance, I use plate and till to fill the more as I can the triangle hole, and then use a long tile to cover the resulting triangle hole. This solution works fine, even if it is not 100% accurate, because it is something which can be seen on the other truck, to have a sort of seam between two surfaces like chrome join. So it is not a bad idea to use that and give also a nice rugosity of the hood. To finish with the hood, you can see here I have fixed it using small pin connector which can be rotated and give the correct orientation of the hood, but also enable me to fix it with two small black axles which act as some pegs and enable the easy removal of the hood. What to do now? We have a raw cabin with nice front face and hood, so let's start build the fake engine below. First, which engine equips the Western Star truck? It is a 6-cylinder diesel engine of about 15 liters from Detroit or Cummins engine. I have chosen the Cummins engine because of its nice red color, which makes a nice combination with the white cabin. Regarding the available size, I could not use regular block engine, so I used a crankshaft with slide-on axle as a piston. I have started by using the same solution as the Mac&Tem set with lift arm and 3L axle, which is in fact way too big to fit under the hood. Indeed, I have only 5L stud available 8 because of the moving motor underneath for the steering and the angle shape of the hood. So, I have reworked the engine using small piston with 2 axle lengths and small crankshaft which come from regular Lego fake engine. But it doesn't work well because of the shape of these crankshaft center pieces, which may block the piston during the rotation. So, I have asked you on Instagram if you have some interesting idea, and you had. You advised me to replace this part by regular lift arm. It is indeed way more reliable, despite it acts the piston a bit strangely, but it works fine. So, I will keep the idea. Thanks for that. And do not hesitate to follow me on Instagram if you want to see my work in progress, creation and contribute to this project. Next, the engine needs a bit more polished with detail. First, with the turbocharged element, which is built using tube and pulley and driving ring and fixed by elbow pieces which mimic the exhaust. Then, the admission of the other side is made with beam, connector and a brick with stud to fix the little radiator. Here it is, a compact and nice engine which fits very well the model. Let's attach it and connect to the drivetrain. A 8-tooth gearing raises it a bit to drive the engine. I used this gearing in order the central shaft was a bit lower in order to fix the winch motor above between the two seats as low as possible. Let's see now the front grille in front of the engine. As usual, this part is important, so I take the white frame I have done with the white part and start fitting different solutions for the grille. The first is a grille plate solution, which is nice but have the disadvantage to hide the engine through the grille. To fit the elbow interior radius, I use this piece, which is rounded to avoid the collision and cover it with corner tile. Second option is brick build. With brick special with grille, it enables to have a curved till to match the elbow interior radius, but have also the disadvantage to hide the engine and look a bit blocky to me. Last option is to create a hollow grille, either with axle, as I did on my Barely 100, either with half beam as on my off-road truck. The first solution is good, but look a bit too massive at this scale because of the beam fixation. The second option is nearly perfect, with thin beam and enough distance between to see the engine, with keeping the idea of the grille, so I will choose this one. We have almost done with the cabin. The last thing to do is to polish a bit more the look by adding some detail. First with the exhaust, pretty straightforward with 2x2 cylinder and elbow connection. Secondly, the top detail on the cabin with the light, air conditioner and 2 horns, which is fixed with Technic bricks. Then, the mirror, which is made using small brackets which enable me to fix the till as a mirror, but also the side turning signal. To finish with the windshield cap, it is made using till and angle brick curved, which gives the correct shape and add a nice detail to this cabin, definitely my preferred detail on it. We have done with the cabin. As you can see, it is a huge part of the design, so let's finish by talking a bit more about the bed and the winch. The first thing I do is to dismantling the cabin from the chassis, because I need to raise off one stud the bed to fit correctly the proportion as you can see. It also enables me to hide the drivetrain compared to the first version, and I also increase the distance between the different links on the rear axle to increase the rigidity. This is often the time when I decide to invest time in the chassis again to connect correctly and in a secure way the different elements together. So this part is mostly about part optimization. By the way, you can see that I had 2 links underneath which secure the rear tandem axle to the chassis in order to improve the stability. Then I start building the bed, mainly using 3x11 panels, which are very useful to cover a large surface with many attaching holes. Consequently, they act as a part of the chassis by reinforcing it, but also contribute to the design. That is why I also care about the different orientation of each part regarding the molding injection point. Again, I covered the visible hole on the side using till to have a clean look. I have tried to make the red-white pattern on the side, but it was a bit too thick, so it will be more suitable to use tiny sticker, but I do not think I will create sticker for this one, so I will use plain bed color. On the back, I built the main roller, which is important part to make roll the load on this truck. It is fixed with 2 angle connectors that I also reuse to fix the rear part of the truck. It has been a bit tough to design the rear part, as the original model have a lot of variation, so I decided to make my own design with the light and the small panel for shaping the Fate mugboard, without being too far from the original design. If it looks something which can exist on that truck, so I have succeeded. Then, I have finished adding some detail on the bed with the side ladder composed of axle and beam, pretty classic but effective solution, and added the side reservoir with dark bluish grey panel. I would like at first to create additional detail like toolbox, chain, spare tire, but there was not many room for them to be pliable because of the motor and the battery box. So I prefer to just put the 2 reservoirs and use them to have a clean cable management behind. Then the last thing to build was the winch. Usually I would have built earlier because it affects the fixation of the chassis, but it was not a big deal as I have already positioned the winch motor. So the idea was to use a worm gear on 8-tooth gearing to ensure the irreversibility of the winch, despite the low efficiency of the worm gear. Indeed, this type of gearing generates a lot of friction under heavy load, which leads to a mechanical power loss of about 60%. It is not a big deal for this creation, but if you want to create a very powerful winch, use spur gear only. I need at first to shift the driven axle on one side to have enough room for the drum. I used for that 2/16 gearing and then the worm screw which drive the 8-tooth gearing on the drum. You can note that I used even axle for the construction, which enabled me to fix the drum with triangle parts and secure the axle with quarter beam on each side, which give a very nice look on this winch. To finish, I have attached the winch to the chassis, but also to the cabin and the motor using beam and connector. Like that, it acts as a reinforcement between the cabin and the chassis, as it is a weak point of the chassis due to the steerable axle below. So, the bed is finished, the cabin too, and all the functions are aboard. What remains? As you can see, there is some strange color on the model, on the windshield cap, the exhaust, air filter and the mirror, so I will make a small bricklink order for the part to finish the look. Did you see something else missing on the truck? Yes, indeed, the big load on the bed that I have to design as well. I will also start the instruction by modeling the truck into the Lego CAD software, and as usual, I certainly will redesign some parts to increase the rigidity, optimize the part and the building experience, in order everything is perfect for the final shooting video. We have done for today. I hope you learned some interesting things as I did with this project, such as designing bodywork, how to start, the importance of homogeneity and the perception of the proportion, but also some tips and tricks to create a nice bodywork. The next video will be the final one on discretion, with a video presenting all the functions, which of course building instruction to be released on my website. Thanks for your attention. I hope you like this new type of video. If you're interested by my Lego work, I put some useful link in the description, as well as a recommended video and a playlist to discover my work. See you next time for the final video about this Western Star truck in Lego Technic. Take care, play well, bye!